Hey guys, it's Tori, and today I'm going to be starting a vlog for the month of March for her Storyathon and just reading throughout March in general. It is March 2nd, Saturday, and there's some bad weather in and I don't have to work today, so I am just going to be kind of hanging out and reading a lot today. My roommate's home as well though, so we may end up doing other activities together later. I'm not sure, but we will see. It is currently about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have spent the morning reading and finishing The Marriage Portrait by Maggie, which I discussed in my last vlog for the We Love Jenny readathon, so you can check that out if you're interested there. That did work for her Storyathon as well, as we were following Lucrezia de Medici, a real historical woman, and some of her experiences in Renaissance Italy, so that was really interesting. And now I need to figure out what to read next, which I think for her Storyathon I'm going to pick up The Chosen by Elizabeth Lowry. I'm so excited to read this. I know Katie from Books and Things loved this. It follows Thomas Hardy and his wife Emma, who passed away, and their relationship after her passing. And I don't know what else, but I've heard great things about it, and it just seems right up my alley. It's not very long, so it should be a good one to start with that I potentially could even finish this weekend, depending on how things go. And I'm seriously just really excited to pick it up. I do also have, because I have a weekend of just really nothing, and I'm actually very motivated to read right now, I am considering potentially reading Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys, because it's been on so many TBRs. And I was just thinking the other day about how a couple months ago I made a video about 30 classics I wanted to read before I turned 30, and I have only read one on that list at this point, and it's been a few months, and I just feel like I need to try to prioritize getting to at least one of them. And so I think this is going to be the one I read, but like I said, I also do want to get into The Chosen and get into her Storyathon, so this is a potential. I may pick this up if I end up finishing The Chosen pretty quickly and need something else to pick up. I think this is going to be the one, so we will see what happens, but I think I might try to get to this month either way. But for now, I do think I'm going to start with The Chosen, because I think I want to get a little bit further into some non-classic fiction to get it off my TBR and deeper into her Storyathon specific books. As of right now, obviously Wide Sargasso Sea, I could bend things and make it into something that would work for this, but it's following a very fictional person. It's not following any specific true event that involved women or anything like that. I mean, it does, but it's very, very generalized. Like, it's just not going to hit the same specifics that I feel like her Storyathon usually calls for. So it kind of sort of works, but I do want to prioritize this one, I think, for that, and then maybe get to this later, and we'll just go from there. So that's all I have to say for this opening introductory clip. I'm going to get to reading, and I will update you once I have thoughts to update you on. Hey guys, so it is March 6th, and I am about halfway, a little over halfway through The Chosen by Elizabeth Lowry. I am really enjoying this book. It is very much a theme and character driven story, so there's not really hardly any plot at all, which has made the reading experience rather slow, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just is not what I was expecting going into this book that's under 300 pages. I was expecting it to be a pretty quick read, so I could hopefully get a bunch of other things in the month, and that's not to say I won't. I think I'll still finish this in the next few days. I just expected to be able to finish it today. I have today off work. I don't have a lot of plans until later today, so I figured I'd have a few hours to be reading this and just really fly through it, but I just feel like I have to really absorb what's going on in this story. I have to take my time and just enjoy the way it's making me think and things like that, and so it's not as quick of a read as I was expecting it to be, which has been a little bit of just something to get used to. Like, I was expecting to just fly through this, and I'm not, but it is beautifully written. It's a wonderful homage and love letter to Thomas Hardy and his writing. There's a lot of little things in this story and the way Elizabeth Lowry is telling it that it's very reflective of things that appear in Hardy's novels, themes and other ideas that appear in Hardy's novels, which I really love, while also giving Emma Hardy really her dues. She's really creating such well-rounded people through looking at Thomas Hardy and Emma Hardy and their marriage Thomas Hardy's grief and his obsession with his writing and how that impacts his life, and the way grief is causing him to reflect on his life in a way that's just very honest and wistful, and it's just really wonderfully done. So I think this really has the makings of being a favorite of the year. I just need to embrace a little bit of a slower pace with it than I was expecting, and that's all right. Like I said, I'll probably finish in the next couple of days still. It's just not going to be today because I only have like 130 pages left. So I really it's only 2 o'clock-ish, and I really should be able to finish this in the hours I have today, but I don't want to force myself through it, and I'm finding that I'm needing, after like 20-30 pages, I'm needing breaks to just kind of reflect on what I read and think about how I'm feeling about it and pick up on little nuances before I continue on with the story. So really great reading experience so far. I just need to readjust my expectations of it, but I do think it could be a favorite of the year, and I'm excited to see how the rest of it goes. On a very different pacing note, I am currently almost done. Okay, not almost done. I'm like a few hundred pages away from being done with The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson on audiobook. I'm listening to it. I started listening to this like a month ago and just got distracted by needing to listen to other things. So it's been a bit since I listened to it. Finally came back to it, and I am loving it still. I love this series. It's been so long, over a decade since I originally read it, and I forgot how amazing it is. I think I'm probably appreciating it even more as an adult just because I have a better understanding of things, and also because I've read other books in the Cosmere, and so I'm picking up on things, and certain things coming up I'm thinking about more and noticing more than I did the first time, and so I am just loving it. We just passed a really iconic scene. I was dying at work while I was listening to it, where Elend and Vin crash a ball, and I was living for it. I freaking love it. This book is just so exciting. Brandon Sanderson has a way of making me feel like I just need to like jump up and run around and like lay down and kick my legs up in the air, like that kind of excited, pumped feeling. Brandon Sanderson is the one who does that every time for me, and I don't know why I never remember that. I don't think I will forget it anymore. I am loving being back in this series, being back in this world. I'm excited to continue with the second Mistborn series, the Wax and Wane series, because I think I'll gain a lot more from that after having revisited this series. I don't think it will be better than this, but I do think I'm going to appreciate a lot of things better in that series. So I'm glad I did come back to this before I continued with that. I'm excited. I am planning to reread all of the Way of Kings, the Stormlight archive as well. I have not read Rhythm of War yet, and I know Wind and Truth, I think that's what the 5th one's called, is coming out at the end of this year. I do have it pre-ordered, so I'd like to get to Rhythm of War before that comes out for sure. So I think I'm going to listen to the audiobooks of Stormlight Archive as well. I have a few other audiobooks I really need to get to, so I probably will kind of pause after this series in order to listen to a few other ones I already have downloaded before I get into Stormlight Archive, but I do intend to do that, and I'm very excited about that. So suffice it to say, loving this. I can't think too hard about how this series is going to end, because I do remember a lot about that, and I just don't think I can handle it, but I am freaking loving this book, and I'm so excited that I'm loving it so much. I want to put this series on my favorites of the year because it's been so long and I forgot so much about the story, but technically it is a read, and I've always kind of known it's one of my favorite series of all time. But I think now I could actually say it probably just is my favorite series of all time. Maybe. Ooh, would it beat Harry Potter? Oh, I don't know if I could say it beats Harry Potter, but it's very up there. I think Harry Potter has a nostalgia factor that this could never beat, but I also feel like this is just getting me so hyped. I freaking love it. And I'm so excited to continue rereading and reading for the first time more Sanderson, especially the Cosmere, because I just love it. I just adore it. So that's my reading update right now. Like I said, I don't have to work today, but I do have a recording session planned with my roommate for our podcast later today. So I'll be doing that. In the meantime, I'll probably be picking this up a little bit. I do need to I have a crockpot meal from my meal kit service that I order that I need to start right about out now, so I'm watching a reaction to Up because nothing like seeing other people get emotional at that movie. And so I think while I do that, I'm going to start making my soup that I'll have later. And then I also need to break down The Hobbit. I need to be reading The Hobbit for my podcast over the next month or so. So I think I might break that up and get going to start reading that this next week probably. And then I also actually have some plans for April reading that I might get started on preparing now, even though it's really early. I just feel like I'm motivated to do it, so I think I want to do it. Also, I'm so sorry, I should have said this earlier. I apologize in this clip if you've heard my washer and dryer going. All of a sudden it got really loud. It wasn't this loud and then it suddenly was, so I apologize for that humming in the background. But anyway, this is the end of this clip. I will talk to you once I've probably finished The Chosen. Hey guys, so it's actually a couple of weeks later. I ended up having just a lot of life stuff get in the way, but I did finally finish The Chosen by Elizabeth Lowry, and I ended up giving it 5 stars total. It might be slightly below, like on the lower end of a 5-star rating, at least as far as my personal connection to it, because I don't think I was as in love with this book or like as drawn in as I would have liked to be. But the point of this book is really to explore grief and the few days specifically after Thomas Hardy lost his first wife. And I think this book does that really, really well. It was beautifully written. I mentioned, I think in the last clip, that I love a lot of the homages to Thomas Hardy's style of writing, and that just really continued a lot of specific descriptions and symbolism that was being explored that is very Hardy-esque in its style. So I was really impressed by that with Elizabeth Lowry and her decisions in writing this book. I really loved that both Emma and Thomas come off as just very well-rounded people. Neither is perfect. Both have their part to play in the difficulties that occurred in their marriage, but they both also have good hearts and want to do better and seek for a happier life in their own ways. And it was just very well drawn. These characters were very well explored, and the idea of grief and struggling in a marriage that there's been a lot of hard years, and yet also there's still some semblance of love there and a memory of love that was maybe lost or felt like it was lost long ago. And then one of these individuals dies, and just a lot of the mixed emotions that are involved in that and this sort of sense of unreality. There's also a lot of description of, or exploration I guess is a better term to use for this, but an exploration of what it's like to be a writer and living in this fictional world, these fictional worlds and these stories that you're creating, and missing out on reality and almost being disappointed by reality unnecessarily because you are so focused on this false reality. And so I really liked how that was explored. None of it was very on the nose. None of it was like, this is what they're feeling, da 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 da. It was just a lot of, he's jumping around in memories, he's experiencing sorrow over this loss, but also kind of angry at her for her choices in the latter years of their marriage that made things harder for both of them. And it was just really, really well written. It's a wonderful story. I think if you enjoy Thomas Hardy, especially if you enjoy Tess of the D'Urbervilles, you'll really like this because that is explored a lot in this book as well. And also just, yeah, if you want a book that really explores grief in a very beautiful and in-depth way, I think that this one really does a great job with that. It is very slow. Like, the story is very much focused around him experiencing his grief. There's not really any plot. It's all just him having these memories and just working through the grief the few days after his wife passes away. So go into it knowing that if that's not your thing, then this may not be your type of book. But if you are interested in that theme, if you're okay with slower books and are interested in Thomas Hardy and his life and interested in Tess of the D'Urbervilles, I think you'll get some level of joy out of reading this. And I'm glad I read it. So there is another one done for this month. So I've read that and The Marriage Portrait so far. I'm exactly halfway through the month of March, so I have time to read 1 or 2 other things for sure. I am still working through Hero of Ages. I've taken a break because I only have a few hours left and I'm really scared. I just know people die. I'm not ready to face that. So I've taken a break because I'm like, I just can't I'm not ready to feel that emotion yet. I just want to sit with the joy right now and the excitement of the story. And it's already hit a point where a scene just occurred that did hurt my heart a little bit. It wasn't like a character that we know super well. It was just very symbolic of a lot of the pain that's coming. And I was just like, I can't listen to this anymore. I just need a little break. So I've taken a little bit of a break, but I do intend to finish that by the end of March and definitely think I'll be able to. I did also today want to read a few of the letters of John and Abigail Adams for her storyathon. I was just looking through this, and most of the first few letters over the first few pages are just from John to Abigail, it looks like, which is totally fine, but I'm like, oh, I have to read like 10 letters before I get to letters actually written by Abigail Adams for her storyathon. So a little disappointed by that, but I also know part of what I love about this, about Abigail, a huge part is her relationship with her husband and vice versa. Like, I'm interested in John Adams in large part because of his relationship with his wife. So I feel like it's okay that I'm reading a lot of John's letters to Abigail because it's still very much about her and her relationship with him and her influence on him. So I feel like it still works, it will still be great. And this particular collection is about them writing to each other. So it's not like John's just writing to random people and it's more about John, it's about both of them and their, like I said, relationship with each other. So I'm definitely not going to finish this month. I don't even know if I'll finish this year. I just want to kind of start reading through the letters, and whenever I get a chance to read a few, just go ahead and do it. And eventually we'll make it through the whole thing, I think. But I just really find these two very fascinating, especially together. And I'm excited to learn a little bit about them through their own writings. And then I think now that I finished The Chosen, I'm going to go to Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. This is a little bit of a different Her Storyathon pick where it follows, they're all fictional characters, but it's based on the murders of Ted Bundy, specifically when he broke out of jail and ended up killing some girls in a sorority house. And I believe this one follows the survivor of that sort of attack, again with a fictionalized version of Ted Bundy, but still it's pretty much the same situation, and it's really reflecting on women who are caught in these true crime terrible cases of violence and how that impacts them. And I believe it explores the true crime sphere, which I really enjoy consuming true crime, especially more modern true crime where it's a lot more focused on being advocates for the victim. And so I'm very interested to see how that's explored in this, and so I'm very excited to see how that's explored in this, and seeing how these women who suffered these terrible traumas are honored through this book. So yes, that's what I'm going to be reading next. I don't know if I'm going to finish, well, I know I'll finish it by the end of March because I'm going to try to make sure I do, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to read anything after it this month with how my reading's been going. It's still going slow, it's happening, which is great, but it's still going slow, so really not sure how it's going to be. I know I'll finish Hero of Ages, like I mentioned. So if nothing else, Hero of Ages, Bright Young Women, and The Hobbit may be what I read the rest of the month, and that's it. But that will be great. I think that will be a solid bunch of reading. And then I'm also excited for April. I have a couple of readathons that recently have had announcements that I think I'm going to participate in or attempt to. So yes, anyway, that's all I have to say for now, and I will update you later once I get a little bit more into Bright Young Women. Sunday, the final day of March, and I have a couple of books I finished and haven't talked about yet. So let's get that done so that we can wrap this vlog up. First of all, I did finish The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. Now, due to the reread nature of this and the fact that it's not a Her Storyathon pick, I don't want to spend too much time on it. But suffice it to say, it was really good all the way through the end. It actually didn't make me as emotional as I thought it would, but maybe it was just because I was very prepared for what was going on. And I happened to listen to a lot of it at work where I'm like trying to maintain some sense of decorum, and I'm also getting distracted a lot more by other needs and things and having to pause and stuff like that. So like I'm not able to get invested enough to really get emotional the way I might have at the end of this. But I definitely feel like now that I'm older, there was a lot about this story and the symbolism behind a lot of the fantastical elements, I guess, the religious elements as well in this. I just was able to pick up on it a lot better and appreciate it a lot more. I don't know if I could think of a single other author that gets me pumped the way Brandon Sanderson does. Like, I just get so engaged in his stories. Obviously, there's a lot of epic fantasy I have yet to read, and so there may be others that get me super pumped and excited the way this one does, but I have yet to find that. The closest I have felt a little bit of that with Robin Hobb, but not quite to the same extent. So I really love Sanderson's plot, and I love his characterization of characters. Obviously, it's not going to work for everyone, but it just works for me. I love it. I think on this reread, I actually would put the first book in this trilogy as my favorite. When I was younger, I would have put Well of Ascension first, and then this, and then The Final Empire, the first one. But I think looking back, I was really loving a lot that was happening in the first book. But I do love a lot of the plot twists. I love the further character development in the second and third one. I think it's just my state in life. There were a few things in the first book that don't play in quite to the same way in the sequels that just speak to me a little bit more, but that's totally fine. I was still just as engaged in this. It was a 5-star read, and I will be continuing, I think, listening to more Brandon Sanderson this year. It might be a year of Sanderson for me. I know the 5th Stormlight, Wind and Truth, I believe is what it's called, is coming out at the end of this year. I still have not read The Rhythm of War. I haven't completed the second series in the Mistborn arc. There's a lot of short stories I need to read, the secret projects I still need to read, so I really feel like I'm very driven to read a lot more fantasy this year, particularly Sanderson, and I think I will after I finish this. I was spurred on to watch all sorts of interviews with Brandon Sanderson and videos just explaining a little bit more the Cosmere and what unites all of these worlds and stuff, some of the things that connect them. I didn't look super deep into it. I don't know if I have the time or energy to do that. Maybe eventually over time I'll get it, but at least some of the basics, the general aspects of what's connecting, the background story behind what connects these worlds. And I've just had a lot of fun with it. It's just been a good escapist opportunity for me in a very interesting and thought-provoking way, and so I've just been really enjoying it. So yes, I finished this. So happy I did, and I think I just downloaded for free with the Audible membership. Warbreaker was available, and so I just downloaded that. I do need to finish The Hobbit, listening to The Hobbit right now, and I also have a few other things that I wouldn't mind listening to audiobooks for, so I'm not sure exactly when I'll start Warbreaker, but I think it will be sooner rather than later because I am so excited about it and I just want to keep going with Brandon Sanderson. So anyway, yes, loving that. Maybe I'll even actually next continue with the second Mistborn series. Now that I have the backstory back fresh in my mind, I probably will want to kind of get through those other ones so that I'm remembering a lot of those details and stuff that I now have reviewed. So anyway, that's where I'm at with that, but it was great. I'm a little sad because all of my 5-star reads have either been religious books, which I don't really talk about on this channel. I talk a little bit more about them on Instagram, but I always rate religious books 5 stars because in my mind I'm like, I don't want to negate the fact that this book could really be beneficial for someone else, even if it's not connecting with me right now. Like, I never feel like they're bad books. So I've rated those 5 stars, and then I've rated rereads 5 stars, and I haven't really had anything else. I think there was one other book, and I can't even remember what it was, that I rated 5 stars or close to it because I thought it had certain qualities that I really appreciated, but the fact that I don't even remember what it is just goes to show I haven't really had any favorite reads this year. Hey guys, Editing Tori here, and I just, as I'm editing, realized that obviously the other 5-star read I've had this year was The Chosen, which I read earlier in the same vlog, and just had a moment at this
precise second, just not quite remembering that. So that was another 5-star read I had this year, but like I said in my clip discussing it, I wasn't like 100% 5-star with it. So really though, either The Chosen or Bright Young Woman could easily be on my favorites of the year, maybe both depending on how the rest of the year goes, but I did want to cut in and say yes, it is The Chosen that I had rated 5 stars. The first quarter is over and I can't think of a single book I would put on my favorites of the year unless I did a reread discussion. So that's kind of sad. But I think that might have been healed a little bit by the next book I finished, which was Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll. I actually just completed this one today. Finally, I wanted to make sure I got it done before the end of the month, and I really, really liked this book. It made me very emotional. The approach to the true crime sphere and the difficulties with the sensationalization of these really tragic things that happened to these people who could have lived much longer and fuller lives and had them ripped from them, problems with the criminal justice system, and just the process of grieving in these really traumatic experiences, especially when you don't know all of the details of what actually happened to your loved one. It dealt really well with all of those things and the complexities, and it didn't like preach to you or anything. It just like showed these are some issues and things and how these main characters are feeling, and not even all of the main characters seem to feel the same way necessarily about it. They may feel slightly differently, but all of their feelings and experiences are valid, and it just was really beautifully done. It is a topic that is really dear to my heart. I just have a lot of respect for people who go through these traumatic experiences, and I'm really grateful that the true crime space is opening up to allowing victims to advocate for themselves more and allowing their words to be what people hear, not just their words filtered through journalists or other reporters or whatever, but rather just hearing their experiences straight from them. And this really is exploring that in a fictional way, but in a way that's very approachable to a wider range of people, I think, than the actual true crime community maybe is able to reach. I don't know if that makes sense. I just feel like people are more likely to read this in this fictionalized form, exploring fictional characters in a novel-like format, than maybe a lot of them are to actually consume true crime a lot to the point where they would recognize these problems. And so I really appreciate Jessica Knoll's willingness to explore this topic in a way that will reach more people, or just even just a different group of people than may have already been aware of the problems that are explored here. I don't really have many criticisms. There is one thing, there were a few lines in it that I think they just felt a little on the melodramatic side. I don't know if that's the word I want to use. There were just a few sentences and things that were structured writing-wise that just felt like the author was trying a little too hard to sound really nice and pretty or very sophisticated and intelligent in a way that it wasn't horrible. It wasn't like blatantly like pushing, but there was just enough of it that it kind of pulled me out of the story. And that's very much, I think, more of a taste thing than anything. I don't necessarily think everybody would feel that way, especially when I say like it's really just over that line for me. Like it's not like it's a huge me rolling my eyes all the time while reading this. It was just little moments that I was like, okay, well, I guess that was a little bit more of a dramatically written sentence than it maybe kind of needed to be. But on the whole, it was an enjoyable experience. The whole time I was reading this, I was really glad I was reading it. I never really got tired of it beyond just normal life slump things that I'm still working through. So I really think this could be on my favorites of the year. We'll have to see. Obviously, we still have 3/4 of the year left, and all sorts of things can be read and experienced and things can change. But I do think of the books I've read so far this year that have been new to me that aren't religious books, this one's probably my favorite. So yes, there is that. It was a great completion to my Her Storyathon reads. A couple of other brief things I wanted to mention. I had mentioned a clip or two ago that I was reading the letters of John and Abigail Adams. I really only read a couple letters, but I already am really enjoying reading. They were both by John Adams, written to Abigail, but it was really interesting seeing how he just really trusted her and connected with her and knew she would understand him.
and where he's coming from. And like, even though there's some points where you're like, wow, this literally sounds just so kind of dramatic in some ways, it also has this sense of he's writing it to someone very personally, so who he really, really trusts, and you just know that he's just like that. That's just genuinely how he is, and Abigail knows that and appreciates it about him. And so I intend to continue with this throughout this year, just every once in a while, maybe between reads, picking it up and reading a couple more letters. I may do that today, now that I finish Bright Young Women, before I start my next read. I'm not really sure, but I really have high hopes for my experiences with this, and I'm glad I've actually started, at least, because I've been wanting to start this for a couple months now. So that was a really big win this month. I have also, as I mentioned earlier, been listening to The Hobbit by JRR Tolkien. This is the third time I've read it in my life. The first time was when I was very young and I didn't really like it. The second time I listened to it on audiobook. This time I've kind of done a little bit of both, just depending on where I'm at, because I need to finish this in the next couple of days. Actually, I'm doing a podcast episode with my roommate on this one, so definitely need to push through that last 100 pages or so. It's a little less than 2 hours in my audiobook, so I definitely think I'll be able to do it. I need to finish it by Wednesday, and so that means I have tomorrow and Tuesday to get through it, and I may listen to some of it today as well. So I definitely think I'll be able to. It just will definitely take the push on my part and needs to happen. I won't say a lot about this because it doesn't really work with her storyathon either, but suffice it to say I enjoy it. I love J.R.R. Tolkien's writing style. I do think that I prefer Lord of the Rings over The Hobbit. I know a lot of people feel like they just love The Hobbit because it is much more that fairy tale sweet story, and the Lord of the Rings is a lot more intense and big and just like has a lot more going on, and so I can see why people would like the charm of this. I just kind of find it boring. I love Bilbo, and I'm just at the dragon part too, so I think I'll be engaged in this part because I think Smaug as a representation of a dragon is just really, he's a really well done one. So I think I'll be engaged in that. And like I said, I love Bilbo. I think he's one of my favorite characters in all of the Lord of the Rings and the Middle-earth worlds that I have read about. But yeah, it's definitely not my favorite within the wider scope of between this and Lord of the Rings. But I'm still enjoying myself. We will, for my podcast, be doing the Lord of the Rings as well, so I'll be needing to work through those books. We'll do an episode on each of the 3 books that the Lord of the Rings is now printed in. And yeah, so anyway, that is where I'm at with that. That's what I've done this month, and it's been a pretty good reading month on the whole. I am pretty pleased with it. I really wasn't sure how it would go. I feel like I've been kind of reading very slowly the past little bit, and this month I still read probably about the same amount as I have been, but I think with the Mistborn books and some other things going on, I just feel like I'm getting back into my reading. And even though, yeah, I technically only finished 4 books in this vlog for the month, I still started and got a good chunk of the way through these 2, which adds up to more reading than I've done in the past, like February, January time. So anyway, this clip is very long. I've shared all of my thoughts, so that is all I have to say about her storyathon for the year of 2024. I probably will start my next vlog right after this because I'm going into the TBR Clear Out Readathon, which I'm very excited about, and I need to pick my first prompt. So look forward to that coming probably at the end of April, unless I finally am like in it and ready to read and ready to film, because I could be, I don't know. I feel like I'm on the edge of it, and it just depends on what I end up picking up next. So anyway, let me know down below if you've read any of the books I've mentioned in this video, your thoughts on them, also what you read for her storyathon if you participated. I would love to hear. What are you most excited to read in the month of April? I'd love to hear that as well. I hope you are all having a wonderful day, a wonderful reading week, and I will see you next time. Bye!